to the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Friday, July 22nd. Over the next couple of days, we will continue to have heat across the Great Basin, especially the southern two-thirds of the region. We will have an upper-level disturbance moving across Idaho today, which will cause an increase in winds across much of central and eastern Idaho into Wyoming, with wind gusts in the 30 to 40 mile per hour range, and some gusts, especially in the higher elevations, possibly up to 45 miles per hour. We will also have very dry conditions in this area with low relative humidity. However, this will push the heat a little bit further south with some slight cooling in temperatures. Further south, we will see winds pick up also into western and northern Nevada, and also into southern Nevada and into southwest Utah, with wind gusts mostly between about 20 and 30 miles per hour and still very dry conditions. Thunderstorms today will remain isolated over many of the same areas we saw yesterday, far northeast Nevada into northern and central Utah. Also some isolated thunderstorms in the far south. By Saturday, we will continue to see the slightly cooler temperatures up north, with still very hot temperatures over the southern two-thirds of the region, and isolated thunderstorms mainly over the eastern half of Utah and possibly even into southeast Idaho. However, coverage looks to be lower than what we'll see today, which again is still isolated. Breezy and dry conditions will continue over southern areas of the Great Basin both Saturday and Sunday. And then we will start to see on Sunday a return of monsoon moisture push into far southern areas. So we will see an increase in wetter thunderstorms and also an increase in relative humidity. Over the last 24 hours, again, we saw isolated thunderstorms over eastern Nevada into Utah with limited amounts of rainfall, but we did have some spotty areas of wetting rains. Also some gusty outflow winds associated with these thunderstorms. Over the last 24 hours, we saw light initial attack across the Great Basin, but we did see a new large fire down in the southern portion of the Ely district in Nevada. Otherwise, we continue to see our large fire activity in central and northern Utah and also up into Idaho. Over the last 7 to 14 days, again, precipitation continues to be focused, especially across Utah and far eastern Nevada, but we have seen some spotty areas of precipitation back into central and northern Nevada, with still the drier spots being central and western Idaho and into northwest and western Nevada. 100-hour fuel moisture again remains very critical over central and western Idaho into northwest and western Nevada. That has remained on the dry side, but certainly we've seen some improvements over parts of Utah with the moisture. The satellite loop from this morning still shows high pressure dominating the southern half of the Great Basin, but you can see the upper level disturbance from the Pacific Northwest moving into northern Idaho. Again, that will be responsible for the slightly cooling temperatures in Idaho along with the increase in winds. The monsoon moisture you can see down south in southern Arizona will be pushing north and by later in the weekend move its way up into southern areas of the Great Basin. The weather pattern for later today, again, very dry conditions in northern and western areas with that increase in winds as that system moves by to the north. So again, we have high risk over much of central, southern, and eastern Idaho into Wyoming for the gusty winds, which also mirrors up with high risk up into the northern Rockies. Again, we already have ongoing fire activity, obviously, and ongoing large fires up in Idaho, and these winds will affect most of those fires, but we also could see some new starts, which would certainly grow and spread today. Further south, a mix of low to moderate fire potential. The weather pattern and thunderstorm outlook for today, you can see where the thunderstorms may be located later this afternoon, over parts of Utah and into far northeast Nevada. And then the wind gusts generally in the 20 to 30 mile per hour range, but we will see those winds peak a little bit higher up in Idaho. But certainly widespread breezy conditions across Nevada into southwest Utah today. Relative humidity will remain in the single digits across much of Nevada and up into Idaho. We've seen very dry conditions during the day with poor overnight recoveries, and that will continue here going through the weekend. For Saturday, again, some weak moisture moves its way up into far southern areas of the Great Basin, but for the most part, that deeper moisture stays just to the south. But we will likely see an increase in possible thunderstorms over far southern Nevada. Otherwise, the moisture in Utah is pushed a little bit further east, but still very dry conditions in Idaho and northwest Nevada. So on Saturday, those thunderstorms get pushed again a little bit further east in Nevada, or in Utah rather, with some isolated activity possible in far southern Nevada, along with some breezy winds over southern areas of the Great Basin. Relative humidity remains still very low further north into Nevada and Idaho, and starts to improve a little bit in the Arizona Strip and far southern Utah. Moving into Sunday, that moisture pushes further north, so much of the Arizona Strip into southern Nevada and southern Utah will see that increase in monsoon moisture. No high risk for Sunday. Again, these thunderstorms look like they will be coming in wet right off the bat, so we will see an increase in lightning and likely an increase in initial attack, but again, that moisture will bring an increase in humidity and the potential for wetting rains. And you can see that reflected in the relative humidity on Sunday. Most relative humidity in the daytime will be above 20%. Still very dry further north into Nevada and Idaho. Mostly light to moderate winds on Sunday. Heat continues across the area, but not quite as hot as what we saw earlier this week into last week. So still highs above normal, but mainly in the upper 90s to around 100. Peak of 103 today in Salt Lake. And then you can see still those cooler temperatures remaining up in Idaho. Forecast amounts of precipitation just very spotty with the thunderstorms. You can see the deeper moisture in Arizona, but that's what will be working its way north as we go later in the weekend. By Monday, still that monsoon moisture really takes shape over southern areas of the Great Basin, but still remains dry over the northern two-thirds of the region. You can see that reflected in the significant fire potential. We will see that gradual decline of fire potential in far southern areas, but obviously still very critical over the rest of the northern half of Nevada, northwest Utah, and Idaho and Wyoming. On Tuesday, that moisture pushes a little bit further north. We will see some isolated thunderstorms up into the northern part of the Ely district, possibly up into central Nevada as well, but that deeper moisture really remains to the south. And then on Wednesday, similar pattern, we could see that moisture move its way up into the Sierra Front or parts of the Carson district, so we'll be watching those areas along with central Nevada on Tuesday and Wednesday for the potential of high risk. Right now, it still looks like very isolated activity, but again, those areas have continued to remain very hot and dry, so we'll be keeping an eye on that towards the middle of next week. And then by Thursday, some of that moisture may get suppressed a little bit further south. Still very dry conditions, with fuels continuing to become more and more critical by the day across Idaho, northern portions of Nevada, and northern Utah. 7-day forecast amounts of precipitation. Again, that heavier precipitation with the monsoon will be tied mainly to the Arizona Strip, southern Utah, and parts of southern and southeast Nevada. The 8 to 14-day outlook from July 29th to August 4th shows warm and dry conditions continuing over northern and western areas, and still that above normal signature with the monsoon, which does look like by later in the month into early August, it will start to become a little bit more consistent over southern areas of the Great Basin and at times push up into western and central Nevada and into northern Utah. That concludes our webcast for today. Check back tomorrow for the latest updates.